Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and again, a very happy World Otter Day to you all. I say evening. I speak of evening here in Skye in Scotland, and I think for Salami, one of our speakers, it's also evening. But for the rest of our speakers, a very good morning to you as well. For those that are returning, thank you so much for coming and joining us for a second time today. I can see some names. Graham Roberts, Heidi Davis, welcome back. I'm sure there are others as well, and I hope you enjoyed the first part of our webinar sessions. And for those joining for the first time today, a very happy World Otter Day to you all. It is with great pleasure and delight to have you all with us today. We have representatives or attendees from 32 different countries, so truly a World Otter Day event in both respects of the word, as well as 5 speakers from 5 different countries who I will introduce you to shortly. As many of you will know, there are 2 different webinars taking place today, where IOSF is joined by a number of otter experts sharing their knowledge and experience and expertise with us. These webinars will help make this a global experience and ensure that time zones don't mean that people cannot attend, which is so important, and help us grow our otter family. After the webinars are finished, they will both be placed on YouTube for you to rewatch, or if you missed one or the other, then you can watch them again. During the webinar, you may have questions for myself or any other of the panelists, and if you do, then feel free to use the questions and answers and chat boxes which are available on the Zoom app. And I can answer any questions, or I can ask any questions to our 5 speakers. If you have questions for certain individuals, then please use the time after their presentations, or alternatively, the time at the end. At the end of each presentation, we'll have an open question and answers between myself and the speakers, and at the end of all 5, we'll have an open between anyone. So if you have any questions, then please mention their names for ease for myself so I can direct them. For this afternoon's session, we are joined by 5 further speakers from this morning, all amazing otter experts in their own right and working in 5 different countries across the world. So we have, and I'm delighted to introduce our 5 speakers and their presentations. We have Salami Michael Olalekan, who is based in Nigeria and is going to speak on the perceptions of riverine communities on otters and ongoing conservation efforts in Nigeria. We have Eric Flores, who is talking about otters in Panama. We have Dr. Pablo Hernández, a good friend of mine, who is talking about the new otter Lontra annectens, a cryptic species history. We are joined by Bob Bailey of the Alaka Alliance, who is going to talk about the returning sea otters to the Oregon coast. And finally, we are joined by Linda Wilinski, who is going to talk about conservation photography. So these are our 5 topics that we have today and our 5 amazing speakers, and we are delighted to welcome you all and thank you so much for taking your time out today and celebrate World Otter Day with us. So without further ado, I shall pass you over to our first speaker and our first otter expert of the day. Again, just to repeat myself, if you have any questions for any of the speakers, then please feel free to use the questions and answers or the chat box. Our first speaker today is Michael Salami Olalekan, who again is going to speak on the perceptions of riverine communities on otters and ongoing conservation efforts in Nigeria. Salami, I'm just going to give a brief introduction using your bio and then I'll pass over to yourself. So, Salami Olalekan Michael is an environmental scientist, wildlife ecologist and passionate advocate for otter conservation in Nigeria. He holds a first-class degree in ecotourism and wildlife management and a master's degree in wildlife ecology, where his research centered on otters and manatees in Nigeria's freshwater ecosystems. As a member of the IUCN SSC Otter Specialist Group, Salami has contributed to multiple otter conservation projects, particularly in the riverine communities of Ondo State, Nigeria. His work combines scientific research with grassroots engagement, supporting local communities in protecting wetlands and promoting sustainable freshwater management. Recognizing the urgent need for otter-focused advocacy in Nigeria, Salami founded the Nigeria Otter Network, a platform dedicated to raising awareness, conducting research and driving policy discussions around otter and freshwater conservation. Salami's dedication and impact have earned him international recognition, including grants, equipment, and awards from organisations such as IOSF, the African Otter Network, and Ideal Wild, supporting his fieldwork and community-based conservation initiatives. Salami, I will pass over to you, and once again, thank you for joining us this evening. Thanks, Salami. I can see that.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear and I can see. Thank you so much.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me on the platform today. Nice. Okay, thank you for having me. So I'll be speaking on perception of riverine communities on otters and ongoing conservation efforts in Nigeria. Yeah, in Nigeria, according to Francisco et al. 2005, two species of otter exist in Nigeria. As you can see on the screen, we have the African clawless otter, Ondo State, and spotted neck otters, that is Annectens maculicolis. And this has been found to exist in Kanji Lake and Bogu Game Reserve in Nigeria. And also we have the Ondo State and Annectens maculicolis that have been reported in rainforest of Calabar, Cross River State in Nigeria. And through our research since 2022, we've been able to discover that otter exist in Ondo State in Nigeria. So we conducted our research in 2021 across the coastal areas of Ondo State, that is southern part of Nigeria. Ondo State has a coastline of about 180 kilometers, with surrounding watershed covering 2,000 kilometers square, according to map of Labomi et al. 2009. The coastal community spans across our 4 local governments. We have 18 local governments in Ondo State. We have 4 local governments that we have the coastal communities. We have the Ilaje local government, Okitupa local government, and Eseodo, Irele and Eseodo local government. You can see from the map, showing the map of Nigeria, where we have the 4 local governments in Nigeria. So in 2020, like I said, in 2021, we conducted our research using this research methodology. We did quantitative and qualitative research where we make use of data collection tools, which include questionnaire administrations, focus group discussion, and field observation. What we did, we went to the coastal communities, that 4 local governments. We administered questionnaires to farmers and fishermen that have experience in fishing activities for over 10 years in the coastal communities. And we also engage with local stakeholders through focus group discussion, where we gather people together. We ask questions about otter visibility, their perception, and also the threats that's being faced, including the conflict between the fishermen and otter in those communities. Apart from that, we also engage in field observation, where we make use of line transit along the river bank, observing otter activities. These are some of the ways in which we were able to collect our field data. So from the research, we've been able to identify that otter make use of a swampy environment based on the field observation, including questionnaire information, and also the focus group discussion with the local people, especially the fishermen, and also the farmers in the communities. So we're made to understand that otter exist mostly in the swampy area, while some of them identify that will also be found along the river bank and also in the marshy area in that coastal communities. From the observation, the field observation, I was able to generate a distribution map for otters. You can see on the screen. You can the research focused more on spotted neck otter. That is the one we did. But when we got there, we discovered that it is not only spotted neck otter that exists in Ondo State. So we were able to document for spotted neck otters and also African clawless otter. But the research then focused on spotted neck otters. But the 2 species have been identified to exist in the coastal communities of Ondo State. So from this screen, we're able to identify some of the hotspots where this otter species could be found. Could be seen in those communities. We have the four local governments here. We have the Ondo, we have the Ilaje, we have the Araromi, we have the Ilaje, and we have the Okituboba, and also Ondo. These are the communities where they could be found in those coastal region. We have the Araromi, Erinje, Korea. These are some of the list of the communities where we've been able to identify that otter species exist. So we also carried out a research in identifying the major threats that spotted neck otters faced in the community, and from that direct hunting is a major threat to otter species in the coastal communities, while accidental capture take the second threat. We also have inadequate law enforcement, pollution, sand mining, habitat degradation, and also illegal construction are some of the threats associated with spotted neck otters in the region. From the slide, you can see the picture. This is a picture showing a trap that is being set to capture most especially African clawless otters, because from the research, we understood that spotted neck otters use more of aquatic environment like the streams and rivers, while African clawless otter will move more on land and also the aquatic environment. So most of these fishermen and also the farmers, they set traps along the river bank to trap this species. And also the picture showing on the other, these are the eggs of spotted neck otter retrieved from one fisherman at Edukoroga, that is SLW government. So through our research, we also asked some of the respondents, the local people, to know the major conflicts and what are the reasons why they have more of negative perception regarding otter conservation in that area. So how we did this one, we make use of thematic analysis. Thematic analysis in the sense that we have like topics that is conflict, and we also have subtopics that has to do with identification of different kind of conflict. Is it in terms of what are some of the likely conflicts? Is it destruction of fishing nets, destruction of fishing, and also destroying fishing nets? So we're able to segregate based on the topic. So from the response, we could deduce that almost 100% of the people we interviewed agree that otter do steal fish that is being caught in their fishing nets. And also around 80% of people that we interviewed said that otter species damage their fishing nets. As you can see from the picture here, this is a fisherman. It took us to his own location. We could see as this fishing net that has been destroyed. It's said by otter that has been destroyed by otter based on his own perception. And the other people that we also met, all of them said the same thing, that though otter exists in the community, but they have a major issue because of destruction of fishing nets and also damaging, stealing fish that is being caught, which has to reduce their the livelihood and also the amount of money or gain they're supposed to make during fishing activities. So we also asked them about their perception and attitudes toward otter conservation in the region. From the studies, that was 2022, 77% of the respondents told us that they are not willing to support otter conservation. We asked them why. Some of them gave reasons based on the negative perception, killing, stealing fishing that is being caught, and also destruction of fishing nets. So most of them said they will not, they won't support otter conservation. Likewise, also around 87 of the respondents that we interviewed also said they are not aware of any laws regarding that's protecting otter in the region. We also asked them about maybe they've been involved in any conservation education or any conservation talk as regard otter in their community, while all the respondents said they have not participated in any sensitization or otter conservation in the region. This is a picture of spotted neck otter that was killed by one of the fishermen in the community during our field survey, we'll be able to got this from the fishermen. So we have the picture here. So based on the perception and what they said, and based on the conflict in the region on conservation, otter species, we've been able to identify that otter exists in the region, right? But telling them to conserve otter is a very difficult issue, because most of them believe that otter is like an enemy to them. So based on that, we embark on conservation initiatives in order to reduce pressure on otter, and also to ensure that we let our people understand the importance of otter in the community, and also the relationship between how we can coexist, how human can coexist with otter in the riverine community. So we started our conservation initiative as a result of the project since 2021. We've engaged in several conservation activities, education, livelihood initiative in the coastal communities of Ondo State. So like I will be mentioning some. In 2022, I won the IOSF World Otter Day Grant Award. And this grant, when we got this grant, we went to the riverine community, especially at Ilaje, where we sensitized local people on the importance of otter and why they need to conserve otter. And through that same grant, we were able to establish our first Team Otter club in secondary schools in the coastal communities of Ondo State. Not only Team Otters Club, we also engage the youth, and we train them on citizen science, on how to monitor, how to report, and how to cite, and also give us feedback on otter movement in the coastal community, in which we have been receiving responses from people on ground in the coastal communities of Ondo State. So with that, and during the meeting, we have over 100 participants in attendance, thanks to IOSF for the grant, which made it possible for us to organize such an event. So, like in continuation of our conservation efforts in Nigeria, in 2023, I also organized otter conservation education in the Federal Capital Territory here in Abuja to commemorate IOSF World Otter Day, where we have 150 students in attendance. What we did in 2023, we went to schools, submitted letters, and we were able to have a kind of students in the schools. We sensitize them on otter conservation, ask questions, and also make sure that we also donated waste bin, and also education material for students. So that's what we did in 2023. So also in 2024, we continue the conservation efforts, like during World Environmental Conference in 2024 that was held in Federal University of Technology, Akure. I was able to also organize a poster presentation where we have a poster display. This poster has the image of the otter species in Nigeria, and also information about otter, why there's need for us to conserve otter. We have over 200 participants, and even here we have the Conservator General of National Park in Nigeria. He attended the program, and so we were able to sensitize people on otter conservation during the event. So likewise, in 2024 too, I also won the African Otter Network competition, in which I was given a cash prize, and we used the cash prize to also organize inter-school otter quiz competition in Ondo State, Nigeria here. So we use the fund to provide notebooks and waste bin to the participating schools. Here we have students, we have the first position, second position, and third position, where we gave them notebooks, and we also gave them a prize award. We have different schools that participated during the event. So likewise, in 2025, I received a grant from IOSF to support community-based otter conservation through alternative livelihood initiative. So through that, we were able to organize community-based otter conservation in the coastal community in Ondo State. Here we invited close to 15 public and private schools in that region, We also select 25 fishermen, farmers in the coastal communities of Ilaje, Ipare, Esodu. So we select that we had the event at Ilaje where we have the participant. Then there we also discussed about otter. We made them to understand why there is need for us to conserve otter and the importance of otters in the communities. We also engage the students, as you can see from the picture. So we also organize quiz competition. We also have we give a prize award to the first, second, and top schools. We also enlighten them on otter conservation, in which most of the participants, including the teachers in the coastal community, most of them gave a positive responses, and they were, based on the research, they were willing to conserve otters in the communities because that's what we got from them. Like after the event, one of them said they are willing to be part of Team Otters Club, in which we have their details, their phone numbers, and we also ask them to join IOSF web online, and also to follow us on social media to ensure that they get accurate and up-to-date information as far as otter species is concerned globally. So these are some of our conservation initiatives that we've embarked on in Nigeria so far. So in conclusion, it has been established that we have two otter species, that is African colorless otter and also the spotted neck otters in the riverine communities in Nigeria, the riverine communities of Ondo State in Nigeria. And we also observed that most of them, like I said earlier, they had a negative perception, but based on the aggressive on-the-ground conservation effort that we've been able to conduct in the communities, that the perception has changed. Many of the fishermen and also the farmers in the community, they are willing to conserve otters. So we appreciate IOSF and also other conservation bodies globally for providing funds and for also give us education materials that makes our work more productive in the coastal communities. And this has contributed significantly to the enhanced knowledge, and it has strengthened conservation efforts in Nigeria. So we've been able to do that, and we are hoping that in years to come, we also intensify more effort to do more conservation work. So thank you for having me. Questions?
Thank you, Salami, and thank you for not only for your presentation, but for all your work. I know we speak quite a lot, and I know how much work you're putting into conserving otters in Nigeria and particularly in Ondo State. So thank you so much for all the work you're doing and also for your presentation. Graham Roberts has a question. He's asked, obviously you work primarily in Ondo State, but do you have any idea of the wider distribution of otters across Nigeria?
Okay. Yeah, like I said earlier, based on the research, like the research study by Francisco et al. 2005, he made the research stated that we have otter species in Niger State, and also two otter species that have been identified in Cross River State. But based on my own research, my work focused more on Ondo State, but I've been able to go to get information from people along the riverine area that cut across Ondo State to Edo State. We have the rivers cut across Ondo State, Edo State, Ogun State, and part of Lagos State. So they told us that otter exists in those communities, but we have not been able to carry out research to identify that truly it exists. But I believe, because since it's the same coastal line, there's high probability that otter may exist in those coastal communities of Nigeria.
Yeah, that makes sense. And Graham's also followed up asking if there are any national parks in Nigeria where otters can be seen by people. I'm assuming he means visitors or people.
Yeah, we have national parks in Nigeria, like based on that research by Francisco et al. 2005, the African colorless otter in Kanji Lake and Bogu Game Reserve. That's based on that research. We have. She stated that we have it in Kanji Lake and Bogu Game Reserve, which is in Niger State. That is a game reserve in Niger State. So but there is no national park in Ondo State where I can say that they've gazetted for otter species. But we are in Nigeria. We are working on this marine park in Bayelsa. There's an initiative on marine park in Bayelsa, which I believe, since it's still the same coastal environment, I believe that otters species might exist in that area. So we are working on that. We're also like sending our application and also meeting government agencies to recognize otter, and if possible, they can visit these coastal communities for marine park in Ondo State and other states.
Yeah, that makes sense. Fergus Hebert has asked, how do you tackle the issues with otter predation on fishermen's catch?
What do you say?
How do you address conflict with fishing communities, and how do you change the perceptions? Is it easy? Is it difficult?
Oh, okay. That's a very interesting aspect. I could remember, like I said earlier, that 2021 when I started my research. I don't really know much about otter, but when I got to that community, like during my first encounter with that, oh, I'm here for otter. What they say, you are here to conserve otter? Do you want us to this thing that is destroying our fishing activities? Some of them, like, they have a very negative perception. They did not even want to listen to me. But thank God that I went with someone that is from that particular community. So it was the one that told them that, oh, this guy has come to enlighten them on otter. So, like, to answer your question straightforward, it has been a very difficult attempt. But based on our initiative and with organized conservation educations, and like the one we did recently, we gave them livelihood support, like we provided fishing nets and also farming activities. So that has also increased their awareness that, oh, it is important for them to conserve, which has also made them, and they are now willing to conserve other species. So initially it was difficult, but based on the progress we've received so far, they are willing and they are ready to conserve otter in the communities.
Oh, that's brilliant, and that's testament to the work you're doing. Like you say, you started, it was very difficult, and now over the years it's starting to become more easy, and now the fishing communities are more willing to be a part of it, which is fantastic. Pablo, one of our speakers today, he said, "Hi Salami, congratulations on your work and all your talk, sorry, and all your work and efforts. Do you think using recycled materials to build fishing traps could reduce conflicts with otters?"
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, I believe that using recycling material can also do that because, since we are talking about sustainability and also circular economy, so it's one of the initiatives which could be employed, and I believe it could
Yeah,
also makes the sustainability work effective. Yeah.
yeah, brilliant. I think the last comment is from Grace Yoxon of IOSF, who said, "Thank you." As I said, thank you so much for all you do. You're doing so much for otters in Nigeria, and we really appreciate the work you're doing. So thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Salami.
Yeah, thank you too.
Thank you. If anyone has any further questions, then please feel free to use the chat boxes and we can ask Salami later on. But for now, Salami, I'll once again say thank you so much, and we'll look to pass over to our next speaker.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank
Yeah.
you. So our next speaker is Eric Flores, who is going to talk about otters in Panama. So just a little bio into Eric. Hi, Eric. Eric is a member of the Panama Wildlife Conservation and staff scientist at Coiba Scientific Station. I hope I pronounced that right. In Panama. He holds a PhD in biosciences from the University of Exeter in the UK. In the neotropics, they experience astonishing biodiversity, but natural history, habitat use, and species distribution still represents unsolved question for many taxes. With this, Eric is primarily interested in behavioral ecology of data deficient and critically endangered species in Panama. The integration of these areas and conservation biology are also important in orienting his research. So Eric, thank you so much again for joining us from Panama, and I'll pass the floor over to yourself. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Eric.
It's okay, the slide?
Yeah, if you go full screen, we should see it perfectly.
Yep. Thank you. Well, I appreciate the International Otter Survival Fund through Ben Jackson for inviting me to give this talk to you and the celebration of the World Otter Day. I will try to address some issues related to the information which is really limited here in Panama about the otters and the species that we have here, which is in a tropical otter. There is no information really, maybe because the difficulty to spot this animal in the wild, and for now, there is no any regulation that protects properly or specifically this species, and the specific threats are really unknown in Panama. So there is a lot of information that needs to be collected and presented to the wider audience, so people will be more aware about what the species is and why the species is important in the total ecosystem. Well, digging into the information, the first mention of this species in Panama goes back to a work by Edward Alston, which produced this Biologia Centraloamericana in 1879, and it's because a specimen that was collected in Panama was transferred to him, and he identified the species as Lutra felina. Later, in the 1920, there is a seminal work by Edward Goldman, who produced the first compilation of the mammals of Panama. And here he mentioned the species as Lutra repanda, with a picture of the skulls of this animal, mentioning that it inhabits the lower tropical zone in the country. By that time, he also mentioned that the animal was common west of the country to the Panama Canal zone. But in fact, I think that this attempt refers to the east of the country, in fact, from the border with Colombia to the Panama Canal at that moment. And he also very interestingly mentioned that the species was more related to the Colombian morphs than the Middle American morphs at that time. I think Pablo will address this more deeply during his presentation later. Well, and the only document published as a compilation of the mammals of Panama dated back in 1970. So from that time until today, there is no any document that address the mammals of this country. And at that moment, Estorio Mendez, which was an iconic scientist, a pioneer in this field, mentioned the species Aluntra annectens. I think Pablo will also address this species later on. Well, a more recent document by Martinez Cortez in a local paper, Tecnociencia, that dated back in 2010, listed the species in an inventory, very interesting, in the highlands of Panama to the west of the country. And he mentions that the status needs to be evaluated because there is not much information. I think the documents on publications that include these species are those that are based on rapid ecological surveys that have been conducted for management plans of protected areas, but not most information is focused on these species. Well, in 2023, there was a workshop organized by the International Otter Survival Fund in Mexico. And very interesting, there is a table that was presented. I attended the workshop virtually. And for Panama, there are many questions to be answered regarding the threats of these species. So as you see, we have a lot of gaps that need to be filled with information in this country. And hopefully we will start soon filling these gaps. And in the future, I'm pretty sure that more students and scientists will join this initiative. So it will be more fill for this table in the future. Well, I started collecting information from the Global Biodiversity Information Facility, which is the branch that provides data for species all over the world for the Biological Diversity Convention. And well, as you see, there's a record of data of information going back to 1904, and then there are gaps along the years. But more important is that there was a huge gap of information with no records in the database between 1980 and 2012. After that period, there is an increase, and basically in the last 5 years, there have been increase and the reports on the occurrences reported in this database, with the last reports going back this year in January and February, which is the dry season here in Panama. I plotted these records and the map of Panama. You see the red dots over there are the records for the species in the country, but interestingly, in the middle of the country, there's no records of occurrences. And I'm based here in the middle of the country, but there are no records spotted in the highlands of the country, and also in an area that is really rich in mangroves. So there's this accounts for this different use of the habitat these species may have in the country. But regarding this gap of information in the middle, in number 1, I will present my proper based personal information of otters in this region, which is called Azuero Peninsula, which is in the central middle part of the country. And the number 2, there are areas of mountain Cordillera, we call it Central Cordillera of Panama, which is a branch that comes from the Talamanca mountain area in Costa Rica and reach this area in central Panama. And these have been observations of scats and also information from local people that have been spotted these species here. And also there is an island, it's called Coiba Island, where I worked also doing research over there, which is the largest island of Central America. But until now, there is no information if this species exists over there. Well, I will continue my presentation with some videos that I've recorded with other friends during field trips in this central peninsula in Panama, which I mentioned number 1 here. Yep. It's a very isolated area. There's a national park over there, but this park is in a, like we call it, Sky Island, because it's a mountain forest, but it's surrounded by pasture land and agricultural fields. But even though along the streams and rivers, time to time we can spot these otters. I hope you can watch the videos. This early morning, I think the animal was feeding. This is during the dry season, and we were lucky to spot the animal. There's a more closed view, and it's another river during the morning as well. Yeah, after the otter spot us, then flew away. And this is a very interesting video shared by a student, a university student that is in contact with us. There is a river mouth. You see at the bottom of the screen, the sea line, and there is I think it's brackish water in this area, and you can spot the otter. I think it was also feeding at that time. Yeah, very close to the sea. Yeah. So there's an interesting way to capture information, because now with the advent of mobile phones and communication all over the areas, people at least can record the sightings of the otter, and then later can send to us the information. Well, last year we did the first awareness activity in a school in this area, where we spotted these otters and made these videos. And with a group of students, we deliver information for the first time to them about the ecology of the animal, the biology of the animal, how many species are in the world, what are the specific features that separate this animal from other mammals in the wild. And of course, it was a great time to deliver this information with students and doing another environmental education activities with them. So we hope in the future we can engage more people and more students and also university students to be part of this conservation efforts in the country. I'm quite happy because among the attendees of this webinar, as a student, Gabriela Quintana, who is a Panamanian bachelor student, she's already working on her proposal for her thesis work, which is going to be the first bachelor degree thesis in the country. And she will be working in this place in yellow, you see, when I mentioned the Central Cordillera of Panama, where some otters have been observed, and comments by local people mentioned they are quite common. So she will start doing some community assessments, some interviews to local people, and hopefully she will deploy some camera traps along specific creeks and rivers to get evidence of the presence of this animal in the wild. If everything goes okay, hopefully we can get some support from my institution, and also in the future we hope to apply for the Rufus-Mal grants for nature conservation to deeply the research that we can do here and doing more environmental conservation actions in the country. So that's for me for now. Thank you again to the International Otter Survival Fund, to the Panama Wildlife Conservation Foundation. We start doing some research, and also to COIBAEP, my research institution that will support the work of Gabriela for her thesis work. And thank you to all the attendees. I hope you enjoy. I'm open to questions now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eric. Thank you for enlightening us on the current status. And obviously, you mentioned quite early that there's not maybe not loads that's known, but hopefully with yourself and Gabriela working on the Highlands, we'll at least be able to address that side and get a better understanding in that region, and we can kind of build it from there. So thank you so much for taking your time to put the presentation together, coming and presenting, and also hello to Gabriela, and we look forward to kind of hopefully working together and finding out more about the work she's doing as well. So fantastic all around. If anyone has any questions to Eric, I'm sure he'd be happy to answer them. I'll give them a few seconds, but yeah, really interesting stuff, Eric. Thank you so much. I guess a question I would have would be, if we talk, obviously there's not loads known in regards to otters in Panama. Is there, we obviously had Salami talking earlier a lot about kind of perceptions in communities. What is the perception in communities in Panama?
Well, so far, because as I mentioned, the encounter rate between humans and these species are quite rare here.
Yeah.
There are no, I think, direct perceptions of people about the interactions with the species, or maybe the damage these species can do to their local livelihood so far, as is the opposite with the Salami presentation, that the species is considered a threat for the fishing livelihoods. But so far as we know here, there is no information. This is something that we want to achieve through the thesis with Gabriela. But also, when you address some people, they mention, yeah, you can find the animal here or there. I have seen the animal, but there is no direct interaction so far with the people's activities that we know so far.
Yeah, that makes sense. And having that conversation with local communities, they will help Gabriela and point her in the right direction to begin with. That's the most important thing to start. They'll know.
Yeah, the local ecological knowledge is basic for this beginning of this work.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Someone has asked, what else is known about the neotropical otter despite the limited information? I'm not entirely sure how to answer that one, or if you know.
Yeah, well, as I mentioned, the only information, published, that the information has been those decades ago, and we try to dig more into it, but there's no any really recent accounts or descriptions of habitat, ecology, interactions so far with these species in the country. It seems that there's no real charismatic species now, but we don't know in the future if it will come a charismatic one, and then a lot of resources can be delivered to do the proper research.
Yeah, I think that kind of maybe answers Pablo's question. He said, I'm glad the efforts are finally being made to study the otter. His question is, do you know the distribution map of the species and if there are more people interested in conducting abundance studies in Panama?
Well, this is the best distribution map I can show, and it's based, as I mentioned, on the Global Biodiversity Information System database. Perhaps if we start doing a more deep review of studies or management plans, rapid ecological surveys, maybe we can put more dots into this map. But this is, for example, the middle of the country is a big gap. And for sure, we know that we can add more dots to this area after we complete the proper assessment. But so far, this is the best information I can collect so far now.
Yeah, and hopefully the work of Gabriela and yourself, that'll be the catalyst and hopefully kickstart more people being like, oh, like you said earlier about communities knowing if we can make that, or if you guys can make that kind of semi-public and understanding, people might be like, oh, we have the otters here, we have the otters in this part of the country, and then we can build the knowledge that way.
Yeah, and then as I mentioned in the island that you see here with another question mark, when I work, there was a penal colony over there many years ago, and I want to address some of the former inmates to get information from them if in those years there were interactions with others, because it's a huge island and there's a lot of rivers over there and a lot of resources like crustaceans, fish, and I'm pretty sure there is a possibility that the otter moved from the mainland when the island was attached to the mainland thousands of years ago. There's another question that we want to answer.
Yeah. So Leo Duo has two questions. One is, how about human otter conflicting in Panama? But I think you can answer that in respect that they're not seen very often, so the conflict is fairly limited. And the other question was, will you log those witness records in SNS? I'm not exactly sure what SNS refers to, but I'm sure you'll log kind of all the records you find yourself, and Gabriela will log any sort of records of ours.
Yeah. One thing that I should mention that I forgot is that myself, I have been these encounters with others along roads during daytime, 3 of them. I think this could be an issue with this expansion of roads all over and the fragmentation of habitats. I'm pretty sure that because the species is not really charismatic, very secretive, maybe it's just something that is hidden. So for now, it's not really a very conclusive finding that we can just collect. Maybe this is something also that should be spotted in the future.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, another question about the human-otter interaction, but I think you mentioned, Eric mentioned that they're not often seen. They're quite elusive species, so for that reason, there isn't a major conflict and major interaction, if that's correct. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Eric. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing that. And like I said, I look forward to seeing in the future how yourself and Gabriela get on with your research work. But for now, I will pass over to our next speaker. Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Dr. Pablo Hernández. Pablo has worked alongside IOSF on a few things. Eric mentioned the workshop in 2023 that IOSF part organized with Pablo and Nutrias de Mexico. So we've worked with Pablo. He's a very passionate otter conservationist and an expert in his field. So I'll just give a brief introduction to yourself, Pablo, and then I'll pass you over. So Dr. Pablo César Hernández Romero has been passionate about nature and otters from an early age. He is currently a full-time professor associate at the Facultad de Estudios Superiores Iztacala. Hopefully that's not too bad. National Autonomous University of Mexico. Since 2015, Dr. Hernández Romero has been a member of the IUCN Otter Specialist Group, serving as co-coordinator for Mexico and Central America and leading the Otters of Mexico project and Proyecto Lontra MX. Since 2012, he has acted as a principal investigator and a specialist advisor for various otter conservation projects across 12 states and 13 protected natural areas in Mexico, collaborating with institutions and universities. His contributions have established him as a leading expert in otter research in Mexico. In recognition of his work in research, conservation, and the discovery of a new Mesoamerican otter species, which he is going to talk about today, he was awarded the Otter Oscar Award by the International Otter Survival Fund in 2016 and 2024. In November 2023, in collaboration with IOSF, he co-organised the Central American Otter Workshop, bringing together researchers and students to establish a collaborative network for the study and conservation of the Mesoamerican otter. Pablo, I'll hand over to you. Thanks.
Thank you, Ben. And share. Yeah. Just you can show the presentation, Ben?
Yeah, I can see it now. If you just go full screen, it should be perfect.
Yeah, it's perfect now?
It's
No?
Could you go full screen with it? Or is it?
Okay. Let me check. Maybe what about now?
Yeah, that's it. Thanks, Pablo. That's perfect.
Okay. Thank you, Ben. Hello there. And this is a talk about the discovery of new species or describe the new species. The talk is the new otter Lontra annectens, a cryptic species history. So, approximately 18,000 new species are discovered in worldwide each year. That means there is a lot of species hiding from the science around the world, and only we know the 16% of the all biodiversity. So it's a tiny portion of the all the species, and the otters are no except. Okay, but what is a cryptic species? The cryptic species is a concept where we can difference one or two or more species from one. For example, here you can show the lemurs looks similar. Some change in colors and shapes in the bodies and tiny details. But if you need to separate in species, you need different genotype characteristics because they have a same phenotypic, looks similar, but in genetics, on another different characters are different species. So in this example, it's easy identify the species one from the species two. In the all present the same characters are blue and they are red. It's easy, but in most of the case, is in this part of the evolution process and the adjacent divergent process are difficult to identify in items of difference. This is part of there are the cryptic species. For example, in these toucans are different species, but in the past they have a one name, no, one species, and separate in different species. So in this case, in the Lontra longicaudis is the same case, okay? But the mix of different methodologies make this lineage separation is possible. In this context, the neotropical otter, Lontra longicaudis, has a long distribution from the north to Mexico to the north to Argentina, a huge distribution. And in the release is as less concerned and trade in the most of the countries they are distributed and have in the cities one. Okay, these species are have three subspecies are recognized. Which subspecies? Lontra annectens from the north in Mexico, Central America, and the Andes, and Lontra enudris in Amazonian region, and longicaudis in the La Plata River Basin, La Mata Atlántica in Brazil. So this are the, or was the three subspecies from tropical otter. The difference is in the rhinarium shape. This part is the rhinarium, the noise of the otters. In photographs, you can see the difference in these shapes. You can see in Lontra enudris, in Amazonian, is separated in two parts, the rhinarium. Longicaudis in the south is in one part, the rhinarium, and the Lontra annectens shows this part of like a pike in the extreme of the noise is very different. But was the only difference between the three subspecies? Now, the beginning of the beginning. It started when I was working on my master thesis on the habitat use of the neotropical otter in Mexico, and the following question arose because only in Mexico we can find the species in these different types of rivers and in water quality, the climate, more dry, more wet, near to the shore, coast, in the mountains. There's a lot of difference in biographic context. Only Mexico. Well, I asked to me, would a species which should have wide distribution from Mexico to Argentina at a great variety of the environment show more variation than the shape rhinarium? Maybe it's more differences than the rhinarium. Okay, and could there be more than one species? Now, if we saw all past distribution from this species, we can see from the Mexico to Argentina across the huge neotropical otter distribution, there are a lot of different environmental conditions as climatic, variability, competition, elevation, vegetation cover, river size, etc. And the context and geographic context is the mountains, the Panama Isthmus, and the topography of the river basin may have shaped the evolution of the lineage. All these variables maybe makes a divergence process or makes a divergence process. That is my question. And my PhD studies arise this objective, general objective, where study the morphometric, the skull, genetic, mitochondrial genes, and ecological initial variation for the neotropical otter, Lontra to understand the historical and ecological processes that shape its current distribution and potential diversion process. So, in the methodology, these tools or these methodologies, I have expected they resolve the problem. No? In geometric morphology, with morphology in the school and Yao, phylogeography with genetics, and ecological niche for the ecological part. For morphological variation, we analyze the shapes and size variation in skull and jaw of the tropical otter. We use landmarks and semi-landmarks. This is the configuration for the analysis. And in the red points are the samples. So yes, the variation in the skull and mandible or jaw shape is related to the geography. There is a relation between the changes in the shape with the geography. In Mexico, in the north, we can find the most bigger individuals that in the equatorial zones and the Plata or the Argentine zones. That corresponds what the Bergman rules, where in the tropics the mammals are more smaller than in the cold areas are bigger than the equator tropics. And the genetic part, we use three mitochondrial genes to the studio. These dots are the origin of the samples. We use gene bank and extract from feces, from blood, tissue, and hair for different parts of the all distributions. And we found this haplotype network on the right. Here is the population of the Mexican Central America, in green Amazonian zone, and in orange Argentine and south of Brazil. We found 55 haplotypes in three haplogroups, one haplogroups, two, and three haplogroups. If we put in geography this genetic variation, we can solve this pattern, no? In blue, or annectens, in green, nutris, and yellow or orange, Lontra longicaudis. There is a barrier here, and this is the most important barrier, is the Andes Mountains, and we can solve the same difference here. This gap between the north and the south is bigger, is big, and have a geographic structure. And now in the phylogenetic tree, we can find the same pattern in blue from the Mexico Central America, and orange in the south part, and in the middle part here in green, Amazonian zone. Look, here you can see some haplotypes that compares, no? Two greens, one orange. That means there is a gene flow still in between these two subspecies. That means there are one species, and this is another species. In divergent times, we can show is the same time, the same time, middle 0.5 million years between Lontra and annectens, but with the rest is the same, like the separation between all this group, Lontra longicaudis, between Lontra provocax and Lontra felina. There are the two sister species, and they are very well recognized as different species. So it's the same time when they break up in this part between blue and the rest of the zone, like the Lontra provocaps and Lontra felina. This is important. And finally, for the ecological niche, we make models for each genetic and morphometric groups, and pairwise comparison were made to test hypotheses of ecological niche similarity to compare the niche, ecological niche between this region against this and this. Now, we use records of HBIF and records of the samples, and we use climatic variables in Maxent. So this is the comparisons, and the results indicate the collection of the three genetic morphological groups are similar but different. There is no niche equivalence, especially in Lontra annectens. It's very different than each Lontra annectens versus the another subspecies. What means that there are, or this indicates that the lineage are subject of distinct selective pressures on climate and geographic conditions, including condition and presence of geographical barriers. And there are a correlation between the morphometric variation in skull and jaw shape versus environmental variables. But still there, we're missing one piece of the puzzle, that the nuclear or linear nuclear information. So in the last year, Vera and collaborations, we can make put the last piece of this puzzle. So we found the same pattern in two groups. We can find in red now the north part, Mexico and Central America, in blue, the Amazonian and Argentinian zone. We make a analysis with three groups. We found the same pattern. We found in mitochondrial analysis a mix of genes between Amazonian and the south subspecies. That means there are a gene flow. Okay. And in the differences in genetics, we can show Lontra annectens very distant between Lontra longicaudis and Lontra enutris. Finally, this all the information and as a recapitulation, we can show in a phylogeographic tree, we can show Lontra and longicaudis annectens from Mexico and Central America. And look, in the middle is Lontra felina, Lontra provocax, the sister species. This is a paraphyletic group. That means that this is a different species from the species from Argentina and Amazonian zone. Even it's more ancestor or more the Mexican and Central American other than the south and Lontra felina and Lontra provocax. The distance, the gene distance is 1.5% between annectens and another subspecies, and the two sister species, they have the same distance, genetic distance. So, in conclusions, we have a new species, a Mesoamerican otter, Lontra annectens, who has a new distribution, who is from north of Mexico through all South American and Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, and also Peru. And what now? The neotropical otter is recognized as a species complex. Therefore, Lontra annectens is different from a species. This distribution doesn't exist anymore. Okay, now we have two different species, two distributions, and from the new species, and the 14 new species, have this new distribution. This distribution across in different countries in the Mexico, Central America, and the northwest of South America to the Andes. The Andes is the barrier who makes the difference between the north and the south. And the name, I propose Mesoamerican otter as common name because his distribution is very similar to the hotspot Mesoamerica. This is one of the most richest points of the biodiversity of the world, and is the same pattern, the distribution, as the new species. So now we need to establish the extinction risk categories for both species, for Lontra annectens and Lontra longicaudis, the rest in the south. Consider their new distribution and conduct an assessment to the available information for each of them. What is the information? We make a review of two different studies from Mexico to Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru. And we need on the ecology of the new species to fill the information gates. So the most part of the information is in Mexico, 60%, and the rest in all different countries. Okay, we need more studies in this region for this new species to establish the new red list category. And what is the topic of the distribution of the studies? Principal is morphology, is 18 basins, the diet, distributions, and habitat is the most common topics on the researchers, but we need more studies as conservation, abundances. For example, here in Panama, North Colombia, and Venezuela, and different countries on Central America. Not only Mexico, we need a rise in research here in all this part of the distribution of these new species. So thanks a lot of people who works with me in this process of the split into the species, the new species, and finally, I end with this. No, we need more people, more researchers and lovers of the otters in Mexico and Central America. We need you because the otter conservation is an important and alone but beautiful way. And now we have one more species to protect, the Mesoamerican otter. This is Pablo Hernandez from Mexico. Have a happy Otter Day.
Thank you so much, Pablo. That was fantastic. And I think for myself, anyway, you made genetics, which can be quite a difficult topic, quite understandable. It's something I'm not particularly adverse to, so I actually totally understood and you explained it really well. So hopefully the other attendees also
Thank
agree
you.
with that. If you have any questions, so like Pablo said at the end there, we all talk about 13 species of otter, but we're probably going to be, well, we're definitely going to be talking about 14 species thanks to the work of Pablo and the rest of his colleagues. Um, so we have a couple of comments, Pablo. Grace of IOSF mentioned, she said, it makes me wonder if there are potential more species of Lutra lutra. It's obviously got a massive range as well, so there's definitely scope for more work like that.
Exactly. It's probably in Iraq, for example, maybe it's a different species from the Middle East region.
Yeah, definitely. Heidi Davis said, stunning information on the new species. A lot of work went into this research, and thank you to all people involved. All books on otters need to be rewritten, which is true. So we now need to rewrite books for 14 species instead of 13 species. An anonymous attendee said, congratulations on your discovery, Pablo. It was really interesting. Do you think there could be other cryptic otter species?
Yeah, with Lutra for is they have a huge distribution from all Europe to Korea and north of the India, Nepal. Is very huge, and maybe it's possible there is another cryptic species from the otters.
Yeah, yeah. And there's a lot of geographical barriers in that range as well,
Yeah,
similar to the Andes. There's the Himalayas. There's also the North African otters. They've obviously
or
got
North
like the
Africa,
Mediterranean Sea block and then
exactly.
the European one. So there's definitely potential there. Eric, who obviously presented from Panama, said, what sort of samples could be useful to collect for a more detailed genetic analysis, for example, in different regions of Panama and Colombia?
Well, we need exactly more. I don't have samples from Panama, for example, and a few of a couple of samples for the north of Colombia. That is the first signal for the separation of the two species in this region from Colombia. That sample reveals that are very different in a study from 2017, uh, and that starts all this research. But yes, we need more samples from Panama for maybe finish to the put in the stone. Yes, this is a new species.
Yeah, And what samples sort of like you mentioned sprint and blood samples, is that the best sort of samples you need?
Yeah, the best is blood or tissue samples.
Yeah.
The scats are very difficult to amplify, and
Oh,
so
okay.
it's better tissue.
Yeah. Salami, who presented first, said, "Congratulations, Dr. Pablo, for the new discovery in your research."
Thank you, Salami.
Pablo, thank you so much for presenting to us today. It's been amazing, and obviously, like Heidi said, you've rewritten all the books yourself and your team, and we'll all be referring to 14 species from now on rather than 13 species, and that's down to yourself and the work of your colleagues. And thank you so much. And yeah, really appreciate you coming and explaining the work you did in a simple way for simple brains like myself. So I really appreciate it.
Thanks to you and all the people. Huh? And have a happy World Otter Day.
And you, Pablo, thank you so much.
Thanks to you.
Thanks, Pablo, again. And we're going to now pass on to our fourth speaker of the day, who is presenting on returning sea otters to the Oregon coast. And that's Bob Bailey of the Alaka Alliance. So, Bob is the board president of the Alaka Alliance, which is an Oregon non-profit organization dedicated to returning sea otters to the Oregon coast. He grew up in Coos County on the Oregon coast and is a graduate of Portland State University with a bachelor's in earth science. He retired in 2011 after nearly 30 years of working on a wide range of coastal and ocean policy and management issues for the state of Oregon. From 2003 to 2006, he served as an elected city commissioner for the City of Oregon City. He also served on the board of directors of the Oregon Shores Conservation Coalition and the Oregon Wave Energy Trust. He co-founded Alaka Alliance in 2018. When not working to bring sea otters back to Oregon, he enjoys playing guitar with friends and studying the geological history of the Pacific Northwest. Thank you so much, Bob, and I'll pass over to yourself.
Thank you very much, Ben. I appreciate it. Are we there?
Yeah, I've got you. Thank you so much.
You're entirely welcome. And thanks to all the other speakers today. This has been fascinating to learn about the efforts with other species of sea otters around the world and the efforts to identify them and to protect them. I want to start by pointing out that the word alaka in our title is an indigenous word which means sea otter. So our name honors our roots in Oregon's indigenous community. I want to start with some background on sea otters and why we are working to return them to Oregon. Then I'll talk a bit about what the Alaka Alliance is doing to actually achieve this goal. So we know that sea otters are wildly popular. They're cute, they're furry, they have adorable pups that float like little corks. The bond between the mother and pup is very endearing. And just ask anybody who's been to see them in the wild on the California coast or in Alaska, or even in an aquarium or a zoo many miles from the ocean. They are clever, charismatic creatures. They're also a very unique marine mammal. Unlike seals or whales, they have no fat or blubber. Their amazingly thick fur and high metabolism rate keep them warm in the cold ocean. Sea otters need to eat about 1/3 of their body weight in food every day, on average about 25 pounds. These animals weigh anywhere between 60 and 100 pounds. So we're just going to average it out and say 75 pounds. That means they have to eat about 25 pounds of food a day. So they target shellfish, such as this spiny sea urchin, because shellfish are easy to catch and they have a lot of calories. This voracious appetite makes them a keystone species. Their constant hunt for food enables kelp forests and other seaweeds to flourish, and in so doing, fuel the complex ecosystems of the nearshore marine environment. Kelp use sunlight to transform carbon from the atmosphere and nutrients from seawater into living material that feeds the ecosystem. Some species of kelp can grow up to 60 feet tall, creating a rich forest that harbors an array of creatures from algae and corals to small plankton, shellfish, fish, seabirds, and even the mighty whales. Kelp forests are oases of marine life in a vast dynamic ocean. But kelp forests are vulnerable to grazing by these spiny and surprisingly mobile sea urchins. By eating them, sea otters keep the urchin numbers in check and thereby allowing the kelp to grow. But when sea otters are missing, the number of sea urchins can explode, and a swarm of sea urchins will mow down the kelp forest and leave behind nothing but an urchin barren. So sea otters then are crucial to this ecological complexity. And the Alaka Alliance aims to restore and protect kelp forests and all that they provide by returning otters to do their job as guardians of the kelp. Once upon a time, an estimated 200 to 300,000 sea otters ranged along the rim of the Northeast Pacific Ocean from northern Japan to Mexico. The number on the Oregon coast is unknown, but from modeling and estimates, could have been as many as 3,000 otters. These animals were important to indigenous people for more than 10,000 years. They were part of the lives and the culture of native people all along the Pacific coast. The sea otters fostered the kelp forest and rich coastal ecosystem that provided abundant food year-round. Ancient stories tell of sea otters as near relatives in a time when the boundary between animals and people was more fluid. Robes of sea otter fur offered warmth, but also conferred status to their owner and were used to cement marriages and settle disputes. So restoring this cultural connection is an important objective of the Alaka Alliance. But beginning in the mid-1700s, sea otters were slaughtered by the thousands for their lush fur, fueling a global trade between China, Europe, and the Americas. And by the late 1800s, sea otters had been driven to the brink of extinction. On the forbidding Oregon coast, sea otters lasted a little longer. Those last wild otters were killed by local hunters in the early 1900s, a fact that local newspapers reported on. So when the international treaties that put an end to fur hunting, were signed in 1911, a few animals had survived at isolated sites, primarily in the remote Aleutian Islands and on the Alaska Peninsula. A small colony survived on the rugged, isolated Big Sur coast of California. These few survivors were the source of the populations found today. In the late 1960s and early 70s, small groups of sea otters were relocated from the Aleutian Islands to Southeast Alaska, British Columbia, and Washington State. Those colonies have since expanded, and the California colony grew and spread north and south. But despite the success elsewhere, sea otters remain absent in the 1,200-kilometer gap between the animals in Washington State and those in California, and Oregon is in the middle of that gap. The Alaka Alliance began informally in the late 1990s as an idea conceived by David Hatch, a member of the Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians. He observed that sea otters had once been integral to the marine ecosystem and to the lives of indigenous people, his ancestors. He advocated for their return for both ecological and cultural reasons. David spread his idea far and wide and called his effort the Alaka Alliance, but his untimely passing in 2016 cut short his effort. Colleagues, friends, and others came together to incorporate the Alaka Alliance as an organization in early 2018 to carry out his idea. The Alaka Alliance has come to work in a time when the marine environment is beset by many problems, mostly human-caused. Our mission reflects an overarching need to restore and protect Oregon's nearshore marine ecosystem, especially in the face of climate change. We aim to do so by restoring sea otters to the Oregon coast, where they once lived for thousands of years. Our work is guided by three strategic objectives. The first is to get the science right, to make sure we are on solid factual ground in everything we do. And the Alaka Alliance benefits from 50 years of sound science about sea otters and their role in the marine environment. The second objective is to galvanize public support. Sea otters will not succeed in Oregon or elsewhere without support from the public. The third objective is to build support and leadership capacity in coastal Indian tribal nations and build support in the state and federal agencies responsible for sea otters and the marine environment. Even as we work on these three objectives, we have begun to work with our partners and local communities to identify a few sites where sea otters are most likely to succeed. So our first step in getting the science right was to complete an exhaustive feasibility study in early 2022 by a world-class team of scientists. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service then completed its own region-scale feasibility assessment that included Northern California in mid-2022. Both studies concluded that returning sea otters is feasible and will result in substantial ecological and conservation benefits. We have commissioned other studies of the economic impact of returning sea otters to Oregon, and it is clear that the presence of sea otters is likely to benefit the economy of the Oregon coast. Building public support means connecting with the public in person. This is a lot of fun, but it's also a lot of work. We meet people face to face in many settings, tabling at community events, encouraging school kids, telling our story at the Oregon Zoo or the Oregon Coast Aquarium, even hosting an annual beer festival with otter-themed ale. Internet technology and social media has enabled us to expand our reach and make the Alaka Alliance a household word around the world. These tools help us tell our story and engage people in near real time. We aim to host the world's most complete website devoted to sea otters and related topics. I think we have succeeded. I hope you'll take a look and make your own judgment. The webinars on our YouTube channel were born of necessity during the COVID lockdown, but they have proven a boon and enabled us to host, at very low cost, nearly 100 information presentations by scientists, authors, and experts. Not only do we host these presentations, but we record them and post them on our YouTube channel where you can view them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, at your leisure, and all for free. So the Alaka Alliance, as our name implies, is all about partnerships. We're grateful to the many agency, conservation, nonprofit partners, as well as generous foundations and individual funders who make our work possible. This is indeed a collaborative effort. So we're working towards reintroduction by first acknowledging that species reintroduction takes a long time. In California, it took more than 2 decades to return the great condors, the giant birds, to the skies above California. Similarly, with wolves, with bison, with other species around the world, it takes time to do the science and build the support to do so. We're making progress on this third objective, which is to build leadership capacity and political support in tribal nations and within the state and federal governments. We are still working at the local level to engage fishermen and others to build understanding and trust. We cannot be sure when we will have the requisite government permissions and the necessary funding, but we are heartened by the recent commitment of the Wildlife Conservation Network, a global organization, to support the return of sea otters with some major funding. So we are optimistic, I'm optimistic, that sea otters will once again swim on the Oregon coast in the next 5 to 6 years. And I, for one, cannot wait. Now, you can help this effort by going to our website or simply Google our name. We are the only Alaka Alliance in the entire world. Sign up for our monthly newsletter, The Raft, and the new edition should be coming out any day now. You can donate and learn about sea otters and our efforts. Ours is a joyful effort, and we encourage you to help us spread the joy. So thanks again to Ben, to the International Otter Survival Fund for the opportunity to tell our story on this World Otter Day. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Bob, and thank you for so eloquently telling your story and also the history of the sea otters. It's something that I think is semi-well documented, certainly in the UK. There's been TV programs kind of about oceans, and sea otters were one of the things that they talked about. So certainly from my side, I've got an understanding of the history of that, and hopefully now others do as well. I guess a question I would have is like, all your feasibility studies in terms of working with communities is really important, and I think Graham Roberts himself has a question in regards to that, which I'll touch on in a second. But I guess you'll know better than me, but I guess one of the problems that sea otters face is they're reliant on the kelp, and their absence has meant the kelp is now gone. How do you address that situation?
Well, they do rely on kelp, but it's a circular proposition. The kelp rely on sea
Yeah,
otters, and
exactly.
and sea otters also uh, can flourish where there is no kelp. For instance, in estuaries where there's eelgrass beds,
Yeah,
or in sheltered rocky areas where there really, if there are really are not kelp forests, they will help create the conditions that will enable kelp to return. So obviously, we're looking at areas where kelp still exists
yeah,
as areas for potential reintroduction. But we're also optimistic that sea otters, once introduced in those few little areas where there is still kelp, they will set the conditions for kelp to return and sort of get this circular thing
yeah,
going
that
of
makes sense.
otters, and kelp.
Yeah, and they'll produce urchins, and then eventually the kelp will start to recover effectively.
Exactly. And studies in California have shown that.
Yeah. So, kind of touching on what Graham said, first of all, he said an excellent presentation, as all this evening's presentations have been. And thank to myself and IOSF, but more importantly, thanks to you guys for coming and presenting. But he's asked, are there abalone present off the Oregon coast, and will this attract conflicts with lucrative fishing interests?
Yeah, that's a great question. There really are very few abalone on the Oregon coast. And for those that you don't know, abalone are really a very large marine sea snail that has a very large foot, a muscle inside it that is absolutely delicious. So it's highly prized for food. Uh, the abalone have really, they survived for many years with sea otters, hiding in the cracks and under rocks. So when sea otters were absent, there was a boom of abalone, primarily in California, but just a little bit in Oregon. For a lot of other reasons, abalone have really dwindled through disease and overharvest, so that today there is no commercial or recreational harvest of abalone on the Oregon coast. And there really are very few abalone there. And those that are very small and hidden in cracks. So And there's no commercial dive fishery or even recreational fishery on the Oregon coast as there is in California. So we don't expect any conflict with the abalone harvest.
Interesting, and that kind of follows on the next question from Fergus, who does kind of ask, are there any human activities that might threaten the comeback?
Yeah, the primary activity that is of concern to us is commercial and a little bit of recreational harvest of crab, particularly the Dungeness crab, which are fairly large and a very valuable commercial species. But almost all of the commercial catch is in waters that are far deeper than sea otters will go. The crab fishermen don't come in close to the rocky areas just for safety. Although there are some few local guys, especially the young men, who are fishing at the edges of the crab range. And we are doing our best to get out and talk to those guys and figure out who is fishing in the areas where sea otters might go. But that's the principal one. We're also beginning to talk to oyster growers in some of the estuaries. It is not known whether sea otters would target oysters, but we want them to be aware of what we're doing and see if we can figure out ways to protect their oyster harvest through different cultivation techniques, putting them in bags or cages so that they would be protected if otters get into them. So we're trying to reach out to those who use this nearshore marine environment.
Yeah, that makes sense. And in those discussions, how have they felt towards the potential of otters returning, both parties?
Uh, I would say it's mixed. I think many fishermen, including the commercial fishermen who do this for their livelihood, they can see that the ocean is in trouble. And the recreational guys especially notice the fact that the kelp has disappeared and the fish that they target have therefore disappeared.
Yeah.
So actually, we've got a fair amount of support in the recreational fishing community. Now, I want to be clear. Sea otters don't chase or catch finfish,
Yeah.
rockfish or salmon or other fish. They really target just the shellfish, the crustaceans and invertebrates. So right off the bat, we have an advantage because the fishermen rely on a healthy kelp forest, and they're smart enough to know that sea otters would help those kelp forests and their catch to recover. So that's been a real blessing in working with the ocean user community.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Salami has said, thank you for your effort, and has two kind of questions. He said, so far, what is the level of awareness among locals for your work, and are sea otters protected in the region?
Yes, sea otters are protected. Well, no, let me clarify. There are two subspecies of sea otters on the Pacific coast. The southern sea otter in California is listed as protected under the Endangered Species Act. The northern sea otter in Alaska and the state of Washington is not threatened or endangered and is therefore not listed as protected under the Endangered Species Act. But both species are protected under the Federal Marine Mammal Protection Act. And so, yes, sea otters are therefore protected under both federal and state law. The other question, Salami, about the awareness of us on the Oregon coast, I think we're making inroads. It's surprising to me how many people do know of our operation and our effort. But still, you run into people who are not even aware that sea otters are absent on the Oregon coast. They just assumed they were there. So it's a mixed bag. I think with the people who count, which is to say local elected officials and community leaders, we're doing our best to make sure that they know what we're doing and why. But it's also real fun to, as you know from working with school kids, you work with school kids, and pretty soon their families know what
Yeah,
we're doing. And
yeah,
so you work from the bottom up and you work from the top down.
yeah. That makes perfect sense. And yeah, it does cover. I do a lot of work with kids, and their passion is very infectious. So if you can get involved in that, then they've spread the word quicker than you ever can.
It's so fun meeting the kids because their eyes just get big and they really resonate with the animal. And so then they take that enthusiasm home to their mother and their father.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Well, Bob, thank you so much for sharing your work and your passion and your basically your end goal, I guess. If anyone has any further questions, we can ask Bob at the end.
Sure. Yeah, send me an email. Send me an email.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And so I'll pass over to our final speaker, last but by absolutely no means least, is Linda Wilinski, who is going to present today on conservation photography. So I'll give a brief introduction to yourself, Linda, and then the floor will be yours. So Linda is a passionate conservation photographer with a focus on freshwater springs. She is a certified Florida master naturalist who attended Creole School, apologies for that, of art, and serves as a board member for a local nonprofit. Through her photography and lectures, Linda shares narratives of Florida's wilderness, advocating for its protection by shedding light on its beauty and perils. Her passion for otters has led her to collaborate with global otter conservation organizations. Linda believes the true essence of conservation photography is putting wildlife first, even if it means missing a photo opportunity. Thank you so much, Linda, and I'll pass over to yourself.
Thank you. Let's see if my screen works. All right, you see it okay?
Yeah, just go full screen and we should be good to go. Yeah,
Okay, go back. Do you see the picture?
no, I don't see the picture. I
Let's
just see a white.
see. Let me just go back to my documents. Good. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I'm
That's
not
okay.
sure what happened.
No problem.
I've had it up all this time and it worked, you know? See if it comes back. No. Let me shut it down completely and then reopen it.
Yeah, so always works off and on.
All right. Let's try this again. Does it work now?
I think you need to share your screen again.
Okay. Escape. How about now?
Yeah, there we go.
Yay!
Thank you so much.
All right. So, I first of all, I want to thank everyone that is so involved in otter conservation. It brings nothing but hope to me to hear all about the conservation work. It is really absolutely amazing. So, thank you all. So my part will just be about conservation photography, how we can awaken emotions with pictures. So when I first got into photography, I always felt like photography was too focused on the photography, on the photographer itself, rather than the images that we're shooting. So this is how I found conservation photography, and that goes beyond just a pretty picture. If we awaken emotions through our images, we are forcing change because people can connect with pictures. And sometimes a picture is all it takes for people to change their ways. So what is conservation photography? So wildlife in nature takes priority. It's telling a story behind the picture. So if we share information about the subject that we have, people get more information and feel more compelled to get to know the animal, or a plant species and take better care of it. We're lending a voice to the ones that don't have one. And it also involves showing good pictures and bad pictures. Good pictures provide hope, but bad pictures also share awareness, and both of them are necessary to create change. And it should always be ethical. If you are a nature photographer, but you're not ethically photographing your subjects, there's really not a place for you to be in wildlife photography because the wildlife should always take priority. So in kindergarten, I learned caring is sharing. Just recently, I learned that is not really always the case because sometimes sensitive locations should not really be disclosed for protection of the animal itself. If one person goes to an area and takes pictures of an animal, it's not a big deal. However, if there's hundreds of people flocking to one location, that is a tremendous impact on the environment as well as the wildlife itself. And we always want to make sure that we do not stress the wildlife more than necessary. So as a photographer, anytime I tell people not taking pictures is a form of conservation photography, they just look at me like, are you crazy? You have a camera, isn't that what you do? Well, it's necessary for us to bond with the animal on a certain level. So sometimes the animal is just not in the mood to stick around or to have us get closer. So we should also be in tuned with the wildlife and how it's feeling. And sometimes when the wildlife doesn't seem it wants its picture taken, we should just really refrain from taking pictures. Some of the questions that I ask myself when I go out in nature is, does the otter feel threatened when I'm there? Is it trying to eat? Does it have pups and that it's trying to protect? So all these questions are always necessary to see if it's really a good time to take pictures because we want the wild creatures to feel safe in our presence and respected, of course. So babies, right? They are adorable, they're cute, and everybody loves them. And we want to tell the whole world, oh my goodness, she had pups. The thing is that we should contain our excitement to a certain level because everyone is going to want to see those babies, right? And the mom, if you would ask her, she would be like, no, I really don't need you guys to take pictures, of my pups. I rather just focus on protecting them and feeding them myself. Much of the wildlife is sleep deprived. They're worried about their survival, the survival of their offspring. So we should always keep that in mind. Really what specifically the parent would tell us or ask us to do and what not to do. Otters, as everything else, they're not an attraction. We need to see them as families and we need to treat them as such. I've had a lot of people approach me about, show me the otters. I want to see the otters. And I got rather frustrated because they're not an attraction. They are a sentient being that just needs to be respected and protected. So here in Florida, we have the highest concentration of freshwater springs. The springs are a habitat of otters here, the North American river otter, and there are over 1,000 springs here. So we have quite the water around us. And we have 30 of them that are outstanding Florida springs. So they have a ecological or historical importance. Unfortunately, 26 of them are imperiled. And this is just one of the images of the worst polluted spring in Florida. Unfortunately, we cannot protect a species without protecting its home as well. And that is another thing I do. I speak for the springs. I show images of the degradation of the springs because it kind of brings it home to what we really have to focus on and what it can come from there. So the springs are imperiled by overpumping and high nitrate loads. It's it's a never-ending battle because there's just so many factors impacting our springs. Another part is over-recreation. So you can imagine the wildlife is pretty much chased out of this area because there's just so many people that they can't feed at this point. And this is just one of the images to show the wildlife doesn't really have a chance to kind of be at peace during the summers. Our summers, as known in Florida, are very hot, so a lot of people come to these freshwater springs to recreate, snorkeling, swimming, things like that. But we recently put up a lot of signs everywhere to warn people not to feed wildlife because that can cause further conflict with wildlife. So this little guy I observed in a river, he was actually diving down, retrieving these goggles and just chewing on them like a puppy on the dock. Luckily, nothing came off of the goggles and he didn't ingest anything. But that just shows how we should not ever litter, things while we're recreating outside and just really leave it better than when we found it. So here's a few tips on how to photograph ethically. The wildlife kind of has 3 different stages: caution, curiosity, and comfort. Our goal is to create comfort between us. So caution is pretty much the wildlife kind of just is very mistrusting. It doesn't know who you are. It's threatened in a way. It doesn't know whether you're gonna try to kill it. And this is where I completely act oblivious. I act like I don't even know that the otter is there. I kayak in the other direction. I do shoot off my camera just for the animal to get kind of used to the shutter. And after that, after it kind of gets used to me, the animal becomes more at ease. So it goes about their regular routine, but it still kind of keeps an eye on me. So that's kind of like the picture that I have here, where this young otter kind of keeps looking back. And the last one is comfort. So this is when the animal completely ignores me. It moves freely and accepts me into this world. This is not always common. Sometimes it stops at the first stage. We really can't force interactions with the animal. That is really in the animal's court, and we're just there to either be accepted or not be accepted. So I'd like to highlight that this stage is not common, and we should never try to force this because it will not work out. I've seen it. It's we should not ever stress the wildlife in its own habitat. So this is one of the little magical moments. This otter mom dove down, got a turtle within seconds, and flipped the turtle upside down so the pup could kind of check it out. The pup wasn't really too interested in it, and the mom ended up eating the poor little turtle. It unfortunately didn't work out for the turtle, but I was just so fascinated that because of the respectful distance, I was able to observe how this mother tried to teach its offspring how to feed and survive. So the true art of photography is not disturbing natural behavior. We should have confidence in our skills, but we should really be proud of our ethics. So when we are, on our last breath, I always think, what do I want to be remembered by? A lot of photographers pride themselves with prizes, but I think the biggest reward is to win the acceptance of the wildlife. And let's have our empathy as a tool rather than the different camera brands. Here are just a few things that I would like to highlight on how each individual could help otters, which is, of course, never feed or chase a wild animal, respect wildlife, always keep your distance, reduce your fertilizer, especially here for the freshwater springs, advocate, volunteer, be mindful of your own water consumption. Again, we have to keep a home healthy for the otters to thrive. Become an otter spotter. This is beneficial for scientists. And also do not like or share pet otter photos and videos. Raise awareness about hunting season of the North American river otters, because unfortunately here in Florida, there is a hunting season for our otters, and it's especially unethical because it's with traps, with snares, and they recently also are looking into steel traps now, and the hunting season is between mating and den season. So that is a very scary thought of them being trapped right in the height of their survival. And of course, always practice responsible recreation. So this is, I always say my Hazel, but I know she's not mine. She's a wild animal, and I want her to be just wild. The only reason I am able to ID her is because of her missing canine at the bottom, and she has had pups throughout the years. I've been watching her for about 4 years, and I have learned so much just about the species itself and how she treats her offspring, and has really, really inspired my conservation work. And here's just a few images of them. This is her newest litter. So I think each of us can make a difference, and I want to encourage each one of you to just do what you can as much as you can. Because if you think small things don't matter, try sleeping with a mosquito in your bedroom. And it's our obligation to use our camera to speak for our wildlife. And if you wait until the end, right here, ta-da! And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Linda. And I think like the way you portrayed it was perfect, and a lot of people think they're doing, and a lot of people are, but like cameras are obviously a really important tool to highlight species and let people, like I live in Scotland, I can't see North American river otters, but through your photos I can see them. But it's also really, really important to not disturb them at the same time. Yes, we can highlight the species, but if we're disturbing them, then we're being detrimental more than we're being helping them. And I think like I always go under in my head, I'm like, if you think you might be disturbing an animal, then you probably are. Like
Yes, absolutely.
if you know you're in your head, if you're, I wonder if I'm disturbing it, then you are probably. Like
Yeah.
that's what you should think. But really important, like we have an issue. I don't know how many people on this are actually based in the UK, but we have an island here in Scotland called the Isle of Mull. It's probably like one of the most famous places for observing otters in Scotland, in the UK, and we have a real problem with photographers. We get a lot of people wanting to take photos of them, and each photographer wants to get that better photo. So each photographer creeps 5 meters forward, and then the next one jumps in front of them, and we found that through postmortems, they found that the otters on Mull have a higher rate of emaciation. So basically, they're starving more than other otters around Scotland and the UK. And it was kind of hypothesized that it was because of photographers forcing them to leave their food.
Yeah, that's very unfortunate.
Yeah, they have a really high metabolic rate, all species of otter. So if they have food, if they have come out of the water, there's a reason for it, and it's not just because they want to, it's because they have to.
Right.
We have a few comments. Bob Bailey, who obviously just spoke, he said your message is so important. The folks at Sea Otter Savvy in California are working to spread a similar message, which is very true. They do a great job of doing a very similar, a very similar job to what you're doing, Linda, but with sea otters. We have a handful of questions actually. So, caring sometimes means not sharing locations. That really makes sense, and it's an excellent sentence. And I would agree, even from my own personal point, I would rather sit and watch an otter by myself than with 100 other people. So,
Absolutely.
without even thinking about the otters, thinking about my own selfish needs, I would rather be by myself.
I can relate.
Oleg has one comment, one question. The comment was, Linda, thank you for your unique, sorry, I'm having, my tongue's getting tied. Your unique perspective on conservation photography. I've learned a lot today. And then went on to ask, is there any valid reason for the otter hunting season? That's a fantastic question.
The pelts, unfortunately, the pelts. China still seems to want pelts, and I don't see any other reason to hunt otters. But this is 2025. We shouldn't need pelts anymore.
Yeah, and as Bob kind of alluded to in his presentation, that the sea otter was kind of nudged to very close to extinction, and obviously they've made a small recovery in terms of numbers, but obviously not in terms of range. The North American river otter was in exactly the same boat, and through a lot of conservation effort, they have recovered. But in my opinion, we haven't really learned from our mistakes, and it seems like it's just opened up again to that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's getting worse here than better, I'm afraid.
Yeah, and there's more. Off the top of my head, I don't know, but there's a handful of states that don't trap otters, and for now, they are increasing. The number of states that are allowing trapping is kind of creeping up again. Heidi Davis has said, I love that, Linda. Your messages need to be spread worldwide. You're amazing, and your love of otters is surely contagious.
Aw, thank you, Heidi.
Oleg has said, pelts question mark, that is not a valid reason. I'm sorry to hear this persists, and hopefully it comes in soon. Couldn't agree more, Oleg.
Yeah.
Dante Hernandez has said, hello, it's common for people in a town or locality where otters are found to think it will become a tourist attraction, and in coordination with government agencies, they take action to promote otter sightings. So what alternative activities can be promoted to avoid otters becoming a tourist attraction and to benefit the people where they are distributed? Really good question.
I think it goes back to not disclosing locations. It really does. Anytime to share pictures of otter, even if you take a picture of an otter and you know the location, just withhold the locations.
Yeah.
Even if there's a landmark that's really well known, avoid having that landmark in the picture.
Yeah. And I think kind of following on, ecotourism is obviously important for wildlife, and obviously around the world, ecotourism is a big thing, and it does to a certain degree help wildlife. But you can be an ecotourist or an ecotourist tourism. I don't know the word I'm looking for, like promoter, someone that runs an ecotourism and not disturb animals. It doesn't necessarily mean you can run an ecotourism business and disturb animals. You don't have to disturb them. You can observe wildlife from afar. And
Yes.
in my opinion, if you're observing wildlife, you don't need to get close. You don't need to get too close. Especially otters are carnivores. They are aggressive as well. Like you shouldn't want to get close to them. You shouldn't want to get close to any animal, full stop. But big carnivores, definitely not.
Absolutely. Yeah, I had a run-in with in last summer. There was tubing going on and there was otters swimming in between tubes. I mean, it was a scary situation. And this one guy's yelling, "Oh, there's an otter!" And he tried to swim after the otter just to have that experience to swim with an otter. And I said, I would not do that because they have really strong they pack a strong bite, and they can sever your finger. And the lady next to this person looks at me and she's like, well, then it's time for the otters to go back home. And I just looked at her and I said, well, this is their home.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
you are intruding into their home. You
Yeah,
can't tell them to go home. This is
yeah,
it is, you know.
yeah, absolutely.
A little disconnectedness is apparent when it comes to wildlife, unfortunately.
Definitely. Salami's asked, here in Nigeria, a lot of people enjoy taking photos of wildlife. So how do we ensure that ecotourists comply with the non-disturbance side?
I think we should just focus on reading the animal. You know, there's different gestures that wildlife gives off, even voicing, you know, their concern. So if an otter is ever huffing at you, you are way too close.
Yeah,
You know, if an otter just dives down and gets the crayfish and keeps swimming, you're okay. So it just takes for us to be a little bit more in tune with the wildlife. And I'd rather stay too far away than too close. So the best bet is always to be way too far away from the animal than being close up.
yeah, and I think
If you
also,
can't read the animal.
yeah, and I think like I'm assuming all the pictures in your presentation were your own.
Yes.
Yeah, so like you could see through your approach to photography and photographing otters that you can get really good pictures without disturbing them. It's not, in fact, you probably get better pictures because you get natural behavior. They're not going to
Exactly.
run away for a start. Like if you get
Exactly.
too close, I know from Eurasian otters here in Scotland, they're very elusive, they're very shy. If you disturb them, they will just disappear. So you're not going to get
Yeah.
in the first place.
Nothing is worth stressing wildlife.
No,
Not one picture in the world
no,
is worth
exactly.
stressing the wildlife.
No, but it's definitely possible to get
Yeah.
a picture. Like you've shown through, I don't know, 15, 20 pictures on your slides that you have an array of fantastic pictures without
I have
disturbing.
thousands.
Thousands, yeah. Bob has said the conflicts between wildlife, especially charismatic species and ecotourism, are global. If tourism companies are licensed, they can hopefully be required to control their access by their clients to wildlife. I agree.
Yeah, very true.
If you're running tourism things and people want to get closer, you just have to say no, I guess. It's the like ecotourism is also a really important thing and a large thing around the world, and it's up to the tourism operators to be like, no, this is where we go to. We are not disturbing them.
Yeah. So here in Florida, manatees are a big thing in the winter because they come into the springs to be protected from the cold because they can only tolerate temperatures up to 68 degrees. So a lot of tourism money goes towards swimming with the manatees. And for the last 2 winters, I've decided to find an alternative from swimming with the manatees to get my pictures. So I've started just putting my underwater housing into the water and staying in the kayak without swimming with them, just to kind of give an example of it really is possible not to swim with the manatees, but still get pictures.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
you know, we can look for alternative. And I always think if we really want to make something happen, we can find a way.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Linda, thank you so much. I'm going to ask if anyone has any questions for any of the speakers, including Linda, then you can throw them in just now. And Linda, I really appreciate your time and your passion, and thank you so much.
Thank you. It was an honor to be here.
Pablo, we have a question from Eric for you, and he has asked, can fur be used for genetics? Pablo, you still there? Eric, I'll ask Pablo that question and get back to you on that one. I'll send him a message. Is there any questions for any of our speakers before we say our farewells and let you away to World Otter Day? Go and enjoy World Otter Day. Oh, Pablo's here. Hi, Pablo. We can't hear you. Eric was asking if fur can be used for genetics. But we
Okay,
can't.
sorry, I
Oh,
don't
yeah.
listen can you repeat the question? Sorry. I listen now.
Eric was asking if you can use the fur of otters for your genetic work.
Yes, you can use the fur for the genetics, but you need the capillary the part of the fur of the hair. Well,
Okay.
there is a genetic material, and it's very useful. I use the fur for some samples for zoos, for example, and aquariums.
Okay, that makes sense. Fergus Hebert has a question for both yourself, Pablo, and Eric. And he said, does the discovery of the 14th species of otter affect research going on in Panama? Possibly for yourself, Eric, or Pablo, either.
Yeah, I think, well, I just was talking to Gabriela at the moment that Pablo was mentioning this. It's a recent account, so I think we could mention both until IUCN list or recognized this new species. I think it's a no easy task. It's a complex thing because it needs to go through an assessment. But it's very important and interesting that we just mention and cite the paper that has been published in any document that we produced. For now, I think we could keep the actual taxonomy, but also addressing that there is something that just came out of the studies, and in the future it will be for sure. I think it will be considered, but the point is here, for example, with grant applications, and I think it's a strong support. If we cite this as a new discovery, is going to be better for any application in the future.
Yeah, that
It's
makes
my opinion. I'm not sure Pablo could add to that.
Yes, as Eric said, it's important the new species for the information we need to make a decisions, especially in some countries as Panama and Honduras, for example. There is a few studies, and doesn't matter the name of the species. No, the relevant is arise these studies to fill the gaps on the information, especially in this part because it's the special of neck between the south part of the distribution and the north. So I think Panama is a very important point to start it and with new research and with all the different methodologies as camera traps and SCATs all the trends monitoring as Costa Rica starts now in the few years they have the same case, but now there is more people working with the others now. So it's important in Panama. It's very important work in this part, especially in size population, for example, and traits for the otter conservation in the region.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you so much, Pablo. Heidi, thank you so much for your kind words about IOSF and in regards to us putting on social media, on YouTube. Really appreciate that. But most importantly, she wants to offer her thanks to the 5 EU speakers, so Salami, Bob, Linda, Pablo, and Eric. Really appreciate you guys coming to speak today. Just to add to what Heidi said, both presentations, the morning one and the evening ones, will be available on YouTube at a later